Hello and welcome back to the Architect's Forge. In this episode, we will be concluding our look at the Song of the Dormant and Beyond Song of the Dormant units for the Scions of Yaldabaoth. And as is appropriate, we are culminating with Master Uruk, he who is without prejudice. As we've done in the past, we will begin with some lore about Master Uruk. Master Uruk, he who is without prejudice, is a progenitor sculptor. This is both reflected in the lore and on the tabletop, in that he is the named version of that model. This means that he is a progenitor that focuses on the art of the living flesh. Even after changing identities, Uruk never forgot what his original calling was: war. His military background had made him a perfect candidate to serve the architect. When he began his training with the Scions, he experimented with body modifications on himself, always looking for any addition that could make him stronger, faster, more resistant, and more fearsome. He has always been his favorite subject to work on, and experiments on himself, even before his anointed. His current appearance inspires abject terror in anyone whose eyes fall upon him, and very few have the bravery to look at his face. And so, he has become one of the most fearsome warriors of the Scions of Yaldabaoth, and he embodies in a single individual the absolute mastery of magic, the training of a soldier, and a body extensively modified to become a killing machine. Master Uruk maintains a special relationship with his anointed, and oversees the body modifications of each one obsessively, meticulously. He is profoundly satisfied with being able to get the most out of a body as fragile and as imperfect as a human. In an earlier episode, we discussed his first anointed, Urkala the Maw, and the special relationship he has with Urkala, to the point of keeping him and his twin, even though he was customarily to remove or to eliminate one of them. As the only memory of his previous life, Uruk carries around a vial of his own blood from before the Pelagensia. This serves as a reminder to him that he will never be weak again. You can see it in the video or in the model right there, that little vial or bottle that he holds, with his always grinning, always smiling face. In the lore beyond the lore book, not to spoil too much for anyone that hasn't played Song of the Dormant, in the mini campaign, we get to learn a bit more about Uruk. We see that he is often, almost always smiling, often laughing, and we see more of this deep care that he has for his followers, or his children as he calls them. And not to spoil things, but we see on numerous occasions Uruk risk his own life to protect those of his children, even those not modified yet, like intact. We also see that when it comes to enemies, while he is a great warrior, he doesn't necessarily kill all, and seems to almost view war as a game. But that's a bit of lore on Master Uruk. Before we jump into the profile, just take a quick moment to remind you that if you're enjoying this content, please like, subscribe, and follow. If you have any thoughts on the lore of Master Uruk or of the profile that we're about to go through, I'd love to hear it in the comments. And if you are so inclined and want to support the channel financially, there is a link to a Buy Me a Coffee in the description below, as well as an affiliate link to the Corvus Belli website. So if you're going to be buying anything directly from the Corvus Belli store, if you use that link, it'll help support the channel financially with a bit of a kickback. But The main way that you can support is the free way by liking, following, and subscribing. But with that out of the way, let's jump into Master Uruk's profile. Master Uruk costs 40 points, which is high cost for an attached character, but is on par with some of the more powerful high commands that we see on the table. People like, for example, Drago. He does bring a single command token, which is a bit low for some high commands, but he doesn't actually use the command token himself, and the Scions are actually fairly lacking in terms of command abilities. So one command token is often enough. As would be expected, Master Uruk is an officer and a high command, which means you cannot run him with things like the Progenitor Sculptor, but I don't necessarily think you would anyways, but the officer is the main thing. It's nice for the purposes of units that he's in. He'll be the last one to die. Counts towards the unit, troops in the unit, and all that stuff that we've discussed with all the other officers. He has a fast speed of 4-3, which reflects both his elven heritage as well as all the body modifications. He's just a big, massive, fast guy. On top of a fast speed, he has a very fast charge of 11. This makes him one of the furthest chargers for small base models in the game, and makes him quite the threat. Moving into wounds, he has 4 wounds, which is a good amount. 4 wounds in this game can be chewed through pretty quickly if he's by himself, but for a character that's outside of some of the bigger Northern Tribes characters, that's about as high as you can get. Denoting that magical background of his, and despite being a large hulking figure, is actually quite smart in the lore. He has a willpower of 2 oranges and a yellow, making him quite good at doing different objectives, and also making it quite hard to actually make him flee should you somehow get over his very good morale of 3. So overall, those are some pretty good stats along the top. Obviously, Uruk is one of a kind, so his availability 1. So we see some pretty solid basic stat lines. Let's get into his keywords. Aside from the standard ones like character and being an elf, which doesn't matter yet, neither does Dark-Minded. We don't have anything that really plays on those yet. Getting into the first keyword of note, he does have Dispel, Blue, and Black. Of note, missing from his sheet despite his lore, he does not actually have the Spellcaster keyword, but luckily he does at least have a Dispel of Blue and Black, which means if somebody's trying to attack him with a spell or debuff him with a spell, he can protect himself fairly well. That blue die is much better than the black. So it's nice to have. It's always good. You also don't need to worry about accidentally gaining tinge, although Master Uruk might actually like the prospect of gaining some tinge, as we'll see later. As could be expected from the horrifying, eyeless, great horned beast that is Master Uruk, he is intimidating too. With Intimidating 2, you have a good chance of getting at least 1 stress on most enemies, and sometimes you get that nice 2 stress, especially if you're going into a combat. If you can get 2 stress and win a combat, putting 3 stress onto a bunch of most units will make them need to test to demoralize, and on anything that is 1 morale, might need to test to demoralize, requiring 2 successes. So very nice to have. Final keyword is he has Join Infantry. So this is a nice broad join. He can join any infantry, human infantry like Anointed, elf infantry like the Liberated or the Echoes. He can even join those cute little red caps. So he's very flexible with what he can join, and we'll get to he has a lot of homes that he can really fit most places. Finally, unfortunately, he does not contribute to Conquest. He has a Conquest of 0. So when he's by himself, he's not going to be helping with that scoring outside of, hopefully pushing an enemy off a point so that 0 wins, because 0 beats, 0 beats an empty objective. Okay. Moving into his attack. Master Uruk attacks with a respectable attack of red, 2 orange, and a yellow. This averages 2.75 hits with a max potential of 5. It's pretty good damage, especially with some abilities that we'll see later, making this damage a lot more reliable. For the purpose of switches, he averages 2.13 specials with a maximum of 5, and an average of 0.63 hollow hits. Now, he does have the ability to stress to guarantee a tinge, which, while you might want to do sometimes, overall is probably not worth it. Of the things characters can stress to gain, just gaining a tinge is really probably on the worst, if not near it. So I wouldn't usually be stressing. Moving into his switches, he has 3. The first is a double special switch, which is just canceling a block. This is always a nice one to have. We see it pop up every so often in Scions and in other factions. Being able to just cancel blocks is always good, just to get a bit more damage through. On average, he'll be getting 2 specials. So, that means that of that 2.75, more of it is likely to be able to go through. His second switch is a hollow hit, which allows him to heal. It's always nice to heal, especially when you only have 4 wounds, but do be aware of the timing. If you're attacking an opponent, and let's say they have switches that hurt you back, or those would happen after, because of the attacker, you do your switches first. So if you go in with 4 wounds, and you have a heal trigger, you can't actually heal, and then your opponent can use their switch or offensive dice and defense to do damage to you before you have a chance to heal. So just be aware of the timing of that. It'll come up more when we get into his abilities and how he can, maybe attack twice in a turn. His final switch is a single special, and this just gives you a tinge. This is nice to set up his tinge skill without needing to stress to gain an automatic tinge. It's you prioritize, I think, the double special to cancel a block, but if you happen to have 3 and are out of tinge, it's a good place to just get it for free. Overall, he's not a particularly amazing attack profile, but it's pretty good. It's solid, and we'll get into why it's pretty dependable in a bit. But first, let's talk about his defenses quickly. Master Uruk has 2 green and a black die on defense, which will average you 2 blocks with a max potential of 5. The greens are very consistent, so you're usually going to be getting that too, at least. For the purpose of switches, you do average 0.13 hollow specials, so not very likely. I think this is the least likely switch we've seen on the channel to date, but it is what it is. Similar to his attack, he can stress to gain a tinge, but this time also getting a hit. As we said before, can be helpful for setting up that tinge skill, and also if your opponent doesn't have any way to block an offense, could just be a free damage. So discussing that switch we alluded to, he has a single switch in defense for a hollow special, which just gets you a tinge. If you get attacked and you don't have your tinge and you want it, and you happen to roll the hollow special, you can get it. It's nice if you get it. I wouldn't really be thinking about it too much. Now let's get into the exciting stuff, which are his skills. First, let's look at Blood Vial. So this is a tinge skill. So what Blood Vial does is at the beginning of your activation, if you are not engaged, you can target an enemy within 11 strides, spend a tinge, as is required by tinge skills, and place yourself engaged with the target. You then get to make an attack where your opponent needs 2 blocks to cancel each of your hits, and you are considered to have charged, so you can do that repeat all with your dice. Because of this ability, you really want to have a tinge before separating from a unit, so you can, be in a unit, activate, say your Uruk's leaving the unit, and immediately jump out at an enemy. This is a powerful ability that significantly impacts how much damage your opponent can block. Anytime we see that 2 blocks to cancel a hit, it means that realistically, your opponent's, on average, going to be blocking half as many hits. So it can really make that dice that while he's not spiking particularly high on his dice, he's not. It means that what damage he gets will, more of it will get through. This also opens the ability to double tap and stress bomb an enemy. And let me just get into that and break it down a bit more. Because the Blood Vial ability is a skill, so when you are declaring the action, it is a skill. It's not a long skill. So you Blood Vial, you jump in, you attack. At that point, if your opponent is still alive and you've either not pushed them back or pushed them back and followed up into them, you are engaged and for your second action can declare an attack because you still have not actually done the declare an attack action declaration yet. You did a skill, a tinge skill. So because of that, you can set up these Blood Vial turns where you Blood Vial to leap in and attack an enemy, to beat them in combat, push them back, follow up into them, and attack again. Now, when I say that this opens up a stress bomb on top of the double tap, so that chip damage, pushing through a bit each time, you can, in theory, potentially get 4 stress on an opponent in this single activation, without them having a chance to test to demoralize and try and push that stress down, which means you can actually open the ability to get that extra hard demoralization test by having them 2 over. I'm just breaking that down quickly. So when Master Uruk jumps in with Blood Vial, the opponent will, unless they're fearless or immune to it, suffer the effects of Intimidating 2. This means potentially they're taking 2 stress just from him entering into combat. If we assume he wins the first combat where the opponent needs 2 blocks to cancel a hit, your opponent's going to take another stress from losing the combat. Gets put back, Master Uruk attacks again. If they lose that combat, now they're taking a 4th stress. At the end of that activation, now they'll almost certainly have to test to demoralize. And if they have 1 or 2 morale as base, then they're going to be testing requiring 2 successes if they're up to that 4 morale. This can really have a good chance of demoralizing a lot of the units in the game. So, you can also pair this ability with things like a Kipliact, where when Master Uruk jumps in and first gets engaged, a nearby Kipliact can use their command token ability to join their officer buddy in the combat, just making it so Master Uruk's even that much more likely to push through the damage and get all that extra stress. Moving on to his second ability, the Smell of Blood. This one's a lot more straightforward. If you have 2 damage on Master Uruk, you may repeat up to 2 dice from your attack rolls. It's pretty hard to set up. He only has 4 wounds, so you need to somehow have only taken 2 wounds and not be dead. But, consistency of dice is always nice. The most likely way, in my experience, to get this is on the second attack of a Blood Vial double tap. So if on that first attack, Master Uruk is going into an opponent, maybe a Northern Tribes unit that has, say, a red dice in defense, Master Uruk might take 1 or 2 wounds when he's doing the attack. So then when he makes that second attack, he's down 2 wounds and now gets those 2 rerolls and hopefully also heals back that damage. While it's hard to set up, being able to repeat up to 2 dice is nice. It adds consistency to your damage, especially if it's that second attack of a Blood Vial double tap where you're not going to get the charge rerolls in case you flub your roll. But overall, both are very strong abilities for when Master Uruk is out brawling on his own. Now that we've talked about Uruk alone, let's talk about him in a unit. So, what does he bring on his basic stat, in terms of added to the attached profile? First off, he adds an orange to willpower. This can be very strong. It helps low whip units both pass whip tests and avoid that demoralization and those intimidation checks, but it also helps with a lot of feat that require units to make willpower tests. This can be particularly good in units like echoes, or in things like gobblers, or some of the other bug bowls. Some of those more elite red cap or like echo type units, or golem type units that generally have only one willpower because they don't care about willpower. Maybe they're immune to demoralization. Maybe they're, as I said, golems, so they don't need it. But then it makes it harder for them to do objectives. So being able to add an orange is always nice. The H, there is an issue with Master Uruk's English card where the willpower and the wounds were translated still in Spanish. H is wounds. He brings an extra wound, just like the needle, or like Uruk the Maw. Additional wounds are always good. Keeps your unit healthy longer. Makes it so your opponent has to chew through more damage. It's almost like an automatic block every time, except it also makes it so things that heal models instead of just reviving models gives them more chances to actually do that. So extra wounds, always nice. Extra morale is also always nice. Just like the willpower, it keeps units in the fight, allows them to activate switches, and also allows them to engage in feats more often. There's a number of feats that require a unit at their end of action to stress to search for resources or to pick up loot. So having extra morale allows you to do this more frequently and score more points. He also brings an additional conquest to the unit. As we've said in past videos, it's always good. You win the game by scoring, not by killing. So making it so his unit is worth more is always very nice. So those are, I'd say, very good attached profile. We're getting into the I'd say, less exciting part of him as an attached character, which are his bonuses to the attack and defense and their switches. So in attack, all Master Uruk brings is a special. It's nothing really too exciting. There's no ability to stress to get other bonuses. It's just an automatic special. With that, he brings a switch, and it's the same double special switch that we saw on his unattached form, where for 2 specials you cancel a block. It's very straightforward and reliable switch, and you're already halfway there thanks to the automatic special that he gives you. Pretty much, actually identically on defense. Again, Master Uruk is just bringing an automatic special, and he brings a switch, the reverse of his offensive switch, where for 2 specials, you cancel a hit from the attacker. Again, it's a very straightforward and reliable switch. It's just increasing the amount of damage you block. Most units, primarily on defense, are rolling rolling blocks and specials. That's most of the faces on the defensive dice. So it means that even when you're not getting those blocks, you are contributing to your defense. And as before, since Uruk brings a special, you're already halfway to your first cancellation. Finally, Master Uruk has a passive ability that he gives to his unit called the Sculptor of Anointed. This is a very powerful ability that just says your unit does not suffer stress after losing a combat. This removes one of the 2 main ways units gain stress, losing combats and stressing to activate again. So this removes one of the 2 main ways units gain stress, which makes it easier for them to spend stress in other ways. A big one is being able to stress to avoid being pushed back after combat. Often it can be hard to justify spending stress to not be pushed back because either it'll take you to your cap or because losing the combat just put you to your cap. So this allows them to do that. And also, all the other things we discussed before involving scenario play that come with stress. So anything that just ignores a major method of gaining stress in this game is very good. So that's Master Uruk's card, and let's just wrap up, give my final thoughts about the profile. So I view Master Uruk as a pretty dependable brawler. He's pretty good solo when he fights. He can do a bunch of damage, can cause a lot of stress on the opponents, and really just, make them sad. That said, he really wants help getting to the fight. He doesn't want to be walking across the board by himself to get up there. What he really wants is a way to leap out of a unit that's already within 11 to get that double tap that we discussed. And because of this, he synergizes very well with the Breath or Samara, because they both can allow him to gain a tinge before leaving his unit. Because of the rules for leaving a unit, if your unit has tinge, when Master Uruk leaves, he will also have a tinge. So having a Breath or Samara able to pop their ability to give everyone nearby tinge allows him to set up and later in the game, when an enemy is nearby, jump out and do a good old double tap. Now, while he's in the unit, he's bringing quite strong buffs, buffing pretty much all the stats of the unit in terms of willpower, morale, wounds, conquest. And with fairly dependable buffs to their offenses and defense by just giving them a reliable switch in both forms and getting them halfway there. Now, there are a number of units in the Scions that have one or both of those. So there sometimes is a bit of an overlap that makes it so it feels like a bit of a waste. The big example would be the Echoes, who have the identical switches as Master Uruk is bringing to the unit. So it almost feels like a bit of a waste. That said, the other benefits he gives, even beyond those switches, make him really at home in pretty much any unit in the Scions. And thanks to his join just infantry, he can really go anywhere. So I definitely recommend experimenting with where he goes. I know I've had fun with him in Intact, in Echoes, in Anointed, and even messing around with Bug Bowls and Gobblers. As I've said, the ideal play pattern with him is to stay in a unit, providing those buffs until there's that opportune moment for him to pounce out and double tap an enemy unit, either to destroy them or to make them demoralize and flee off the board. So that was Master Uruk. I'd love to hear what you think, whether you agree or disagree about my take on Master Uruk, or really any of the Scions we've discussed so far. This is where we're going to stop our discussion of the Scions of Yaldabaoth for the time being in the Architect's Forge, and we're going to be shortly moving on to another faction. Now, there is a poll-up, or was a poll-up, depending on when this video goes out, to decide. At the time of recording, it has been neck and neck. Embersig was ahead, then Feudum has pulled ahead, and CNN, I believe, is slowly starting to catch up to Feudum. So you'll just need to wait and see who ended up winning. And what we're going to do is we're going to do a similar thing we did with the Scions and go through the base box plus the beyond or beyond equivalent for whatever the next faction is. And we're going to go through that, get through the other factions, and then we'll start returning to different factions and doing additional units. That said, if there are particular units that you want to see me do Architect's Forge and break the pattern, you can definitely suggest it. People that contribute and support the Buy Me a Coffee is a bit of a head of incentive. I'll definitely listen to their requests and recommendations first, just as a bit of incentive to those that are supporting the channel financially. But we're going to get to everything eventually. We'll hopefully get through them at a good speed, and I'm already planning some other videos to do alongside them. But with that, this has been the Architect's Forge, and may the dice be ever in your favor.